So let me get started a little bit with organic fruit produced worldwide. These are slides. I'm going to show a couple of slides from courtesy of David Grant's team from Washington State University that explain a little bit of what is going on with organic food production worldwide. The most important thing to note here is that berries are about 7% of the organic market currently. And there is a very significant amount of wild berries being produced. When we talk about wild berries, it's not necessarily that they're certified. So the 7% that you see up there is certified that have been cultivated varieties and grown with commercial practices. The ones that you see in the wild berries, which is quite a significant acreage, 7.8 million hectares worldwide, are mostly wild harvested and not necessarily certified. Now, when we look at where these berries are produced, you definitely want to note that the largest producer of berries is Europe, followed by Latin America, and North America with about 11% of that production. It is also important to see that the organic industry has had a steady growth in the past decade, from 2009 to 2010, on about 8%. But in that entire organic industry, the vegetable and fruit sector grew even more than what the organic sector grew, with about 12%. Now, also to tell you a little bit about how this growth has changed, how the berries grown worldwide has changed. It's important to note that conventional berries have decreased in about 4.5%. And then this is not necessarily that the berries have been taken out of production, but sometimes it's just that they're switching crops for temporarily, depending on the farmer practices. And it's also important to know that these berries can include, the ones that we were looking at in the previous slide, can include everything from acai berries in Brazil to strawberries in California, or pretty much any berry crop with the exception of grapes. And it's also important to note that organic berries, on the other hand, have kept on growing, and there's different sources for information. For example, this slide, you see 290% growth in acreage. But it really depends where you get your information, but it's important to know that, yes, there has been a steady increase in berry production worldwide. Now let's talk about a little bit about blackberry production in the state of Oregon. The acreage harvested has decreased a little bit from around 7,500 acres to 6,800. Which doesn't necessarily mean that the growers and farmers in Oregon are taking out these berries from production, but it can also mean that this is, again, only acreage harvested, not necessarily acreage that is currently planted and undergoing the first years of growth where you don't have actual production. Or also where if you start plants from tissue culture, it would take 2 to 3 years to actually start having your commercial production, as you would expect commercial. Now, it's also important to see that we have the 45 million pounds produced in 2010, and even though that acreage harvested was reduced, you still have 54 million pounds produced in 2012, which may indicate that even though the acreage was harvested was reduced, the farmers are now introducing new cultivars that are more productive and that yield higher than the cultivars that we had before. And this, you will see actually these kind of results through the slides that I'm going to show you from my particular research. The majority of this fruit is processed in the state. Just a small percentage, anything from 5 to 15%, is sold fresh. And the price paid per pound is significantly higher, falling what you can see in 2010, $1 higher, and a little more in 2012. And this is, again, for conventional production. We'll talk about a little bit the price premium that you would get in organic production. And the graph on the right for you guys would show the amount of acreage that was produced in Oregon in 2012 compared to the small bars on the right of it, which are projections of blackberry production in the whole of the United States that have been produced organically. So it is still a small part of overall the complete organic production, but it has become more and more significant with more growth through the years. In 2008, they were, on the latest census that was available, there were about 348 certified organic farms that grew organic blackberries, producing a total value of $4.6 million. And the acreage increased from 182 in 2000 to about 500 in 2008. And it is also expected to continue to grow in the following years. The price premium paid for organic Marion in Oregon was about 33% more. And it's important to mention that this is a price for processed. Marion is a processing cultivar, so this is the price premium that a grower would get for a particular processed variety, processed cultivar. But if you're talking about fresh market, say sales in a farmer's market situation, the price premium can be 50% more, up to even sometimes double what you would see in conventional production, depending on the time of the year. What else? I wanted to also mention that the price premium that there has been, of course, a continuous increase in prices in blackberries in general. For conventional blackberries, about 5%. And if you see the organic blackberries, they increased in 17% in value on average from 2010 to 2011. Now, let's talk about the importance of why we're conducting this organic blackberry research. As you can see, there is this consumer demand that is continually increasing for crops that have been produced without the use of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. That's why the organic industry continues to grow. And there is also this large interest from berry growers to find a production for their organic blackberries that is more sustainable. And when we're talking about sustainability, we're not only referring to sustainability environmentally, where you don't have that hard of an impact as you would have with the use of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. But we're also talking about economic sustainability. The growers are definitely interested in finding a steady way of sustaining their income to the farms. So all of the information that you have available currently for blackberries is being done with usually the conventional crops. Until our project started, one of the research assistants, one of the grad students last year, Renee Harkins, she began with covering a little bit of research that we did on weed control and irrigation management. And we will continue to, after I'm done, the project will continue with Emily Dixon, that is also continuing Renee's research. Now, the overall goal of the study, as I mentioned before, is to evaluate different fertilizers. And we're going to look at how these various cultivars, and I will go over each one of them, how they adapted to the organic production system through the years. And I will be covering 3 specific studies, 2 of them which were conducted at Aurora, at the North Willamette Research Station Center, and one of it that was conducted at the grower collaborator site in Jefferson, Oregon. Let's start with study number 1. The objectives for this study include evaluating the impact of these 3 different fertilizer sources, which I actually have over here if anyone is interested in looking at. soybean meal, basically, soybean meal, pelletized poultry litter, and fish hydrolyzed and emulsion blend with added molasses. And we were looking at how these fertilizers impacted yield, fruit quality, and yield and mainly fruit quality on Blackberry Cultivars for fresh market. The study site at the grower location in Jefferson was composed of 3 soil series, Camas, Flacuaro, and Newberg. As you can see in this picture of the site, this is from the soil survey. The 3 areas were clearly distinguishable in the specific block where we were planting the blackberries. For this reason, we blocked all of our different reps were blocked to account for this variability. And also, I wanted to mention that the previous crop grown here was grass seed. This is very close to Albany. If you're familiar with this area, you'll see that there's a lot of grass seed grown there. And for about 5 years. And then the primary transition for about they covered the transition period of 3 years before the farm could be certified organic. So actually, the first year of research that we did, we were still transitioning. And the second year, it was already certified. Now, in this study, the spacing and cultivar management practices were set up by the grower. He was giving us the information on how he wanted those cultivars managed. And also, it was conducted in the first and second fruiting years in 2011 and 2012. The experimental design that we use, we arranged all of the treatments in a split plot design with 3 replicates, with cultivar as the main plot and fertilizer source as the subplot. These are the 4 cultivars that we use. Obsidian, let's start with Obsidian, which is a training type that is mostly grown for fresh market, but also is also grown for processing. It is an early producing cultivar that is the first one actually to come in the whole region this summer. Then we have Marion and Black Diamond, both processing cultivars. Black Diamond sometimes being considered dual purpose and being grown also for fresh market. And then Triple Crown, semi-erect variety that is thornless and produces in a little later in the season in the summer, and it's mostly grown for fresh market. Now, the 3 fertilizer sources that we use included the pelletized poultry litter, which is basically a combination of different poultry sources, and this is produced here locally in Canby. It's a very popular fertilizer among the organic growers in Oregon, and it has added calcium carbonate to the formulation so that it could easily be pelletized. And you can take a look. I actually have the granular form is what we use if you want to take a look later. And then we also have the fish hydrolyzed and emulsion blend. This one is produced in California, and the ingredients come basically from Mexico, the fish that is used to produce fertilizer. And then finally, pelletized soybean meal, which is basically a pelletized byproduct of the soy industry. The 3 fertilizers were applied at the same rate on both years, at 56 kilograms per hectare in 2011 and 2012. At the grower collaborator site, we use the separate wheat mat system on raised beds. Usually, you won't see a lot of blackberries grown on raised beds, but this works conveniently for this grower, in particular, to be able to have this separate system. As you can see, it opens to allow for fertilization. And we didn't apply the fish fertilizer through fertigation, which would be the common practice, especially if you have the irrigation set up already. Because we had contiguous plots and we wanted to be able to do the same thing for every plot. So we applied all of the different fertilizers that were randomly distributed through the field. And then we did have drip irrigation for watering, and also the weed mat for weed control. In the middle of the aisles, the grower would mow the cover crop that he's planting there. Now, the data collected for this study included soil and plant nutrient status, that was done per recommended sampling methods, and the fruit that was hand harvested through the 2 seasons included data on marketable and total yield, as well as fruit quality variables, including percent soluble solids through a refractometer, which you can see in the picture, and also berry weight and firmness, which we determined using the machine on the right, that basically squeezes the berry until you have first drop of juice come out. And then we were able to standardize our method for determining the firmness of the fruit. And for that, I want to show this is how we sort our fruit that was going to be used for determining the fruit quality variables. And let's go into the results. I wanted to first mention that there's a lot of information that we collected, and it's portrayed here, and I'm only, because of the limitation of time, I'm going to be able to only cover certain parts of it. But the first thing that I wanted to mention is that Obsidian and Triple Crown were 2 cultivars that steadily had the larger fruit weight in 2011, and Triple Crown in 2012. Also, Triple Crown had the highest soluble solids percentage in both years, but it did have the lowest firmness of fruit in 2011, while Marion had the lowest firmness in 2012. The total yield was lower with Black Diamond and Marion in 2011 and 2012, and highest consistently with Triple Crown in both years. And one more thing to mention here is that the marketable yield was the only variable that was clearly affected by year on, and you can see a big change from 2011 to 2012 for all cultivars. It was also determined by the results that we had, one of the results that we had, that the soil was deficient in boron on year 2. The first year soil boron was actually within the recommended standards, but it went down to a level where it became deficient on year 2. Fertilizer source had no effect on soil nutrient levels, except with the exception of fish. The fish fertilizer increased soil potassium and increased soil sodium. At this point, the soil sodium did not have any detrimental effects, probably because of the continuous leaching that we have because of the heavy amounts of rain that happened in the area, including actually just a little anecdote on 2011 where the entire blackberry plot flooded. It was about 10 feet underwater. Right behind those trees, we have the river, one of the tributaries of the Willamette. And then primocane deficient nutrients were within the recommended levels for all of the different nutrients except for magnesium, calcium, and boron. We also saw that the Blackberry cultivars responded similarly to the 3 sources of fertilizer during the study. But it's very important to note that the cost of these fertilizers vary a lot, from the highest one being the liquid fish at $8 per pound of nitrogen to the least expensive one being the pelletized poultry leader for $2.5 per pound of nitrogen. It is important to see that we will have to have a supplemental fertilization of boron, magnesium, and calcium for with all of the fertilizers used to maintain the recommended fertility levels. Now let's go into the second study. This is the one conducted, one of the 2 conducted at the North Willamette Research and Extension Center. In this study, one of the main objectives was to determine the impact of two liquid fertilizers, both injected through fertigated and injected through the irrigation system, on plant growth, yield, fruit quality for these two processing cultivars that were machine harvested. And in this study, we also wanted to assess the impact of the fertilizer source on the drip irrigation system and the fertigation performance. So, this study was conducted at North Willamette, like I mentioned before, in Aurora. The type of soil for the entire area where the blackberries are grown is considered a Willamette silt loam. And the planting was established in spring of 2010, and it was certified in 2012. Everything, the whole field was fertigated using a drip line under the polyethylene ground cover, the weed mat, but it did not have raised beds as we saw in the grower collaborator site. The study was conducted in 2011, 12, and 13, 2011 being considered the establishment year, and 2012 and 13, the first and second fruiting seasons. And the experimental design a range of treatments, the cultivar and fertilizer, in a randomized complete block design with 5 different replicants. The 2 cultivars that we looked at here, at this point you should be familiar with them, Marion and Black Diamond, both grown for machine harvest. And we tried 2 different liquid fertilizer sources, which I also have on the front if you want to take a look. I don't suggest you smell it. But one being the corn stiff liquor, which includes fish weight digestion in its formulation. And the second one, the fish solubles with added molasses, which is the same one that we used in the first study. The rates applied were, as recommended, 56 kilograms per nitrogen in 2011-2012. And then after that, the rate was increased to 90 kilograms per hectare in 2013, per the different results that we found on the soil test, after soil test. Now, the experimental design for the second part of the study included we wanted to see the impact of this fertigation system on the performance of the drip irrigation, included an additional flushing and no flushing of the system, which I actually wanted to quickly show you how we did the flushing on site. At the end of each fertilization, we would come and flush the line for about 1 minute and get rid of anything that has been accumulating there. And I know it looks a little dark, but you'll see at the end of the video, it's just a very small amount that stays at the end of the hose. And we also tried and looked at the 2 fertilizer sources in this part of the study. This is the injector that we use. It was a pulse-driven electrical injector, and it's usually used for chemigation, where we added the dissolved fertilizer in the tank, and then it was pumped directly into the irrigation system. So when one of my assistants, Helena, dumps the bucket, you will see that the water, although it looked kind of dark at this point, it has just a small residue at the bottom that has not been thoroughly injected. But it did form those little clumps, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, the data collected for this study included plant growth, primocane fluorocane data, including primocane fluorocane number, etc., and yield components. And we also looked at plant and soil nutrient status, as we did with the previous study. And we looked at machine harvested yield and fruit quality variables, as we did with the previous study too. And we also measured the water volume per plot. This was a lot of fun, taking the hose out of from under the weed mat every single time, and then playing it out so that we can collect the volume in different beakers, and then determine how much water was being run through those. Now let's look at the results. Again, let's start with the yield and fruit quality. First thing to note is that there was a significant effect of year from 2012 to 2011, where the yield went down from the first year to the second. And there was no fertilizer effect for any of the variables, with the exception of fruit weight, which was higher when the berries when the blackberries were fertilized with corn. And there was a cultivar effect for all of the variables, with black diamond being the one that yielded the most, or more than Marion, both for total and marketable yield, and it also had the lowest soluble solid content, as is expected for these two cultivars. And it's been shown also in other studies. Also, Marion had the lowest fruit firmness, which is what then again expected for Marion being a processing cultivar. Now, in regards to primocane leaf, with the primocane data, I'm just going to show the table for leaf tissue nutrient concentration. Again, limited to time, we have 2 hours, I will probably go over all of the other tables that I have. But the first thing to mention is that fertilizer had a significant effect on potassium and zinc concentrations, which were greater with fish than with corn. And tissue testing does not include sodium, but that's something that we also thought about, including because of the added amount of sodium in the soil. It would be interesting to look at how that affected the sodium content in the leaf tissue. Also, important thing to note, which we had also in the previous study, is that calcium and boron were within, where the majority of the nutrients were within the recommended levels, with the exception of calcium and boron, which were deficient. And the soil nutrients also were within the recommended range, with the exception of the soil boron. Now, for the results in this study, we also found that Marion had a larger canopy size than Black Diamond in both years. The cultivar on the right being Marion and left Black Diamond, and you can see a clear difference in biomass produced by this crop. Now, Marion having a lot more biomass did not make any difference in otherwise in regards to yield. Black Diamond yielded more than Marion consistently. And also important, just a quick thing to mention, is that Marion had a larger canopy size when it was fertilized with fish than with corn. And yesterday, well, not yesterday, through this week, I've been looking at all of the pictures of all of the plots that I took through the years. And you can see, it's harder to notice, like you can see in this picture from within Black Diamond and Marion. That Marion when fertilized with fish and with corn, you can see it as a difference in canopy size. Now, let's talk about the second part, the results regarding emitter flow rate. Now, the first thing to note is that there was absolutely no difference between using the corn fertilizer or the fish fertilizer in regard to emitter flow rate. And there was also no difference with the drip maintenance that we did with flushing and non-flushing the lines. Organic growers in general consider that since they're applying these thick fish products through the drip system, that flushing is good practice to have. Now, long term, that might be the case, but during the 2 years of the study, we didn't see any difference in flushing between the flushing and the no flushing treatments at all. Now, the one thing that we did see is that there was a 4.5% reduction from 2011 to 2012 in overall water volume for all plots. And then that there was a reduction also in from 2012 to 2013 of about 19% for the second year. So there is a reduction, it's just not tied to the type of fertilizer or the drip maintenance. Here we have some pictures that show where this reduction in volume is flowing. I actually took out some lines and cut them open. And you can see on the top right picture that there is this accumulation of different materials, organic materials that are growing in the lines, in the emitter lines. And on the picture on the bottom right, you can see the top being the one that has been there for 3 years, and there is some material accumulation of things and the organic materials there. And then the one in the bottom, where it's a brand new line, where you can see the difference between the two. Also, the picture on the left showing what the line, the emitter looks on the outside after the 3 years of fertilization. Now, the conclusions for this study, basically, overall, there were no difference between these two fertilizers in plant growth, yield, fruit quality variables, with the exception of what we mentioned before. And then both fertilizers were suitable for plant establishment of organic blackberries. Both fertilizers can successfully be fertigated, and there is a definite need for longer-term studies to determine why this flow rate of reduction is happening and how this reduction can impact and affect the producer's cost and potential replacing cost of fixing and anything that has to do with dealing with the maintenance of the irrigation system. Okay, so here we are at study 3. This was also conducted at North Willamette, where we're looking at the border rows, the border plots, in which we wanted to characterize the adaptation of different fresh market blackberry cultivars to the organic management system. And considering plant growth again, soil vegetation nutrient status, yield and fruit quality variables, as well as something that we didn't see in the other 2 studies, which is marketable storage time. And we, in fruit quality variables for this study, we included titratable acidity, pH, and sugar to acid ratios. And the fruit was handpicked for fresh market, and the treatments were arranged in, again, a randomized complete block design with 4 replicates, and the treatment included 4 blackberry cultivars, Obsidian, Black Diamond, Metolius, and Onyx. Of these ones, the new ones that we tried were Onyx on the right, Metolius, and 2 advanced selections from Dr. Chatfin's breeding program, 1939-4 and 2635-1. Hopefully he'll find this information. The data collected included, again, plant growth, primocane and foraging data with yield components, plant and soil nutrient status, and the fruit was handpicked in the field and included all the previously mentioned fruit quality variables, plus additional pH, titratable acidity, and sugar to acid ratio, and fruit percent, moisture loss, and marketable storage time. The pictures that you see right now, these clamshells on the right, after we collected the 25 berries for determining the fruit quality variables of each plot, we also collected 4 clamshells per plot to see how they perform under storage conditions. All of these berries were transported to the cooler at Food Science, thanks to the help of Dr. Daniel for that. And we would come after 2 or 3 days, depending on the year and how we were doing with Sundays and Saturdays on the week. And we weighed the berries and see what was the moisture loss during that period of time. And we also, we would look and visually inspect each one of the clamshells until we can determine that, like you can see in this picture, mold has grown in it, and determine in which day that happened. The results for this, let's start with yield and fruit quality variables once again. Onyx and Metolius were considered to have a low yield for commercial production compared to the other cultivars. And Obsidian and 2635-1 were the cultivars with some of the cultivars with the largest fruit weight, berry size. And they also had consistently, they were among the greater in regards to firmness and sugar to acid ratio. It also, the two of them had the lowest post-harvest moisture loss in the case of 2635-1, and the longest number of marketable days for Obsidian. In this graph, we can look at the days where we did weigh all of the clamshells, the 4, 7, 9, 11, and 14, and determine the moisture loss. And 1939-4 and 2635-1 were the ones that had the least amount of moisture lost during this period of time. Additionally, when we look at marketable storage time, Black Diamond and Obsidian were the ones that were able to be stored the longest, where cultivar was significant for the marketable days in 2012. And the one after that would be 2635-1. And the conclusions in this study include that all the cultivars responded well to organic production systems based on yield and plant growth. The cultivars differed in the levels of nutrients measured in the primocane leaves, as well as found with the other study. Tissue, calcium, magnesium, and boron were deficient in some or all of the cultivars, same thing as we find with the previous studies. And the higher yielding Obsidian and 2635-1 appear to be best suited for fresh marketing. Now, I wanted to finish with the presentation with the overall conclusions of the 3 studies. First, let's talk about the fertilizers. All the fertilizer sources were suitable to maintain adequate plant nutrition, as we mentioned before. With the exception of plant and soil boron, which needs to be supplemented, and then plant calcium and magnesium. These, if you were a commercial grower, this is something that you definitely want to keep track of and consider if you need to do any supplemental applications. Now, each organic fertilizer source had varying levels of micro and macronutrients, which may lead to the need for adjusting a particular rate of fertilizer over time, especially if you're using different organic fertilizers, which may vary a lot in their nutrient content. Even in a specific batch produced from one year to another, you can see big differences in all of the different nutrients present. Now, let me give you a quick example. For the case of poultry litter, where it was, as I mentioned before, processed with the added calcium carbonate, this may have an additional effect on maintaining the soil pH that we want to have for blackberry production. All of the other fertilizers, we showed that there was a decrease in soil pH, but the decrease was the least with poultry litter because they had the calcium carbonate. Now, fertilizer sources had little to no effect on yield and other quality variables, with a few exceptions, indicating that all sources are suitable for establishing organic blackberries. So, organic animation there. Now, more conclusions. The cost and application method are very important factors for a grower. So if you're applying liquid fertilizers, you may have advantages and disadvantages, one including the reduction in volume that we're seeing in water flow, and when compared to soil fertility options where you don't have that problem. And also cost, as we mentioned before, comparing the two is important. And the cultivars differ in the level of many tissue nutrients, reinforcing the need for sampling and testing that needs to be done per cultivar. And since the current nutrient standards that we have for Oregon are based on Marion production, these may need to be further studied to determine if there is a need for cultivar-specific standards. Also, the fish fertilizers contributed a lot of sodium with no adverse effects so far in the duration of the study. In regards to cultivars, all cultivars perform adequately and would be considered suitable for conventional, organic commercial production. And Triple Crown produced the highest yield and largest fruit weight, but it was also considered to be a little soft for fresh and shipping cultivar. So depending on the growers, what is going to be the grower's venue to sell these products, is something that he or she needs to consider. In contrast, Obsidian had the greatest firmness, but was more sensitive to botrytis. And I just wanted to mention this botrytis really quick, and again, just due to the time limitation, I couldn't go into the specific details. But Obsidian being the cultivar that comes earlier in the season, on the first season in 2011, we had really early rain, and we had this spike in botrytis on all the fruit that we harvested. Now, for the second season, to avoid this, the grower implemented a really good disease management program with organic alternatives, and we saw that there was a very big reduction in botrytis incidence for Obsidian, which was a cultivar that came out first early in the season. Then Marion and Black Diamond, definitely processed market berries, not very suitable for fresh market, especially in particular Marion. And Black Diamond had a greater yield and average fruit weight than Marion. And those are the results from the study. Thanks for coming. I'd like to acknowledge all my committee members, Dr. Bernadette Strick, my advisor, Dr. DeBrila for all his support, Mark Batchel, which was one of the committee members who couldn't be here today because of a personal emergency, and Dr. Ian Sal, covering for him. Thank you so much for being here. And Dr. Mary Klusky, our graduate representative. And I also wanted to finish by acknowledging the funding provided by the National Institute for Food and Agriculture and the Organic Research and Extension Initiative, the Northwest, as well as the Northwest Center for Small Fruit Research, and the industry contribution from AgriCare, specifically Eric Pond. Currently, he's one of the growers more involved in the Blueberry Commission for the state, and also Tom Avenellis. Their support has been great, and without their funding, we wouldn't have been able to conduct this research at the collaborator site. The Tell Harvesters, Sakuma Brothers providing some plants, and Oregon Tilt, their certification, as well as AgroThrive for donating some fertilizer. And thank you also to the entire crew that helped with the completion of this study. All my student helpers, thank you so much for the never-ending, enduring all of the hours that we had to, long days in the summer, as well as all the people from food science for all their help. And I think we had a pretty good experience collaborating in your study and as well as mine. All of the research assistants at Northwest and Gil and Emily, which is not with us anymore, and the other grad students, I believe, and Renee, which unfortunately is not here today, but all of your help and assistance is very greatly appreciated. And that concludes the presentation.